society is complex. Our problems are very complex. Our answers will be complex, but we can only find those answers together with 500 million Europeans.
Let's work together. I'm here to learn from you. I'm looking forward to discuss with you. I would like to hear what you expect from the future of Europe and what you are expecting me to do for you.
25 years ago, it was hard to believe that we'll be on this stage together.
I'm here to listen to you very carefully, and I would like to hear about your to develop the European Union. I'm ready to take your questions.
How can we make Europe more transparent?
We need more content, we need to talk, we need to listen. We need to listen to your concerns and change the system on the basis of your concern.
A essência da União Europeia, apoios que o fazem chegar mais longe, independentemente da sua idade, da sua profissão ou do local onde vive, para o ajudar em novos desafios e a melhorar o seu dia-a-dia, para apoiar os projetos em que acredita, financiamento e a contactos, para estimular o crescimento e criar mais emprego, infraestruturas e transportes modernizados na sua cidade ou vila, escolhas ecológicas que lhe permitem obter energia mais limpa, ensino e formação para desenvolver competências e garantir que todos possam chegar mais longe, investigação, inovação e mais tecnologia para assegurar melhores cuidados de saúde. A União Europeia está a investir no seu futuro, em Portugal e em todos os países da União Europeia. Os beneficiários destes investimentos podem já partilhar as suas histórias, mas a sua oportunidade começa aqui.
Olá, viva! Bem-vindos a todos. Depois desta primeira investimento em Portugal e na Europa, chegou a hora de alargarmos o debate a todos os que estão aqui, não só os que estão na sala connosco no Athens, mas quem nos segue no Facebook, no Twitter, na página do Jornal de Negócios, onde a sessão está a ser
Twitter, Facebook, where we are streaming the session.
com a ajuda de Luís
We
Castro
will also rely on the help of Luís Castro Henriques, the President of AICEP, and Jyrki Katainen, the Vice President of the European Commission responsible by the investment policies in Europe. Before bringing them to the stage, I would like to tell you about an initiative or the way that the works were performed that is thought a proposal made by the European Commission. And the Jornal de Negócios is a very enthusiastic partner because it removes all the work from it. I'm not the one who have the main role of asking questions, but everyone here, or those who are at home or at work or in any other location following our session. So there is an app, and I would ask you to come to using your smartphone. It's very simple. It's Slido, S-L-I-D-O, and I'll give you a few seconds to install it, and then I will share a password for you to be able to join us in this session. From here on, we will vote on some questions that will be asked. Is anyone finding it difficult to access this app? Okay, so the password for us to be hashtag and EU dialogue. It's right there at the screen. I think that now you can see one of the first questions that we have prepared. If there is any difficulties, I'm certain that someone in the room can help you. And we are invited to ask questions in a more usual manner, as you do in conferences, by using the microphone, and then I will ask you to participate. Well, we are here to debate investment in Portugal, in Europe. The first session, one of the ideas was the idea that this is the variable that's missing to our recovery. What we try to do here is to call out the attention for the ways through which we can bring dynamics to the investment in Europe and in the Portuguese economy, to have a national and European perspective on this investment challenge, which is a fundamental variable to withhold the funding and investment in Portugal and Europe. We have Luís Henriques, the president of AICEP. He's a member of the board since 2014. He was responsible for investment, foreign and domestic, with the agenda of bringing new investment to the country and taxes. Before that, he worked in marketing, customer experience and marketing analytics in EDP. He has a master's degree by the University of Cambridge, has an MBA by ICR, and an undergraduate degree by the Universidade Católica, where he taught different subjects. Thank you, Luís Castro Henriques. Please join us at the stage. And now some brief words in English to call and present our guests. Jyrki Katainen, Vice President of the European Commission.
So, Jyrki Katainen is one of the 4 vice presidents of the European Commission, led by Jean-Claude Juncker, with the responsibility over jobs, growth, investment, and competitiveness. To put it simple, we have a kind of a love-hate relationship with you, I think, or the member states might have, I would assume. So Mr. Katainen manages and evaluates the Juncker Plan and more broadly investments and European funds, which we all love. But he's also in managing the structural reform agenda, which we all hate. So overall, it looks at the economic growth strategy for the Eurozone. And so it is a pleasure and honor to have you here to discuss these issues with us. He's 45 years old. Before joining the Commission, he was Finland's Prime Minister from 2011 to 2014, and previously Minister of Finance since 2007 to 2011. So he not only has a deep, or he's not only a deep connoisseur of the Eurozone, its flaws and the improvements we've made in the last years, but he's also an expert in the demanding art of political negotiation. He has led the National Coalition Party in his country from 2004 to 2014, a center-right pro-European party. In 2011, made it the biggest party for the first time in Finland, and then he managed a government with 6 parties, and maybe you can have some lessons here for Portugal also. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. I would give you for a first comment, if you wish, some words.
Yeah, very shortly. Thank you very much for inviting me to this event. I think it's very important in this particular moment of time to think, what do we expect from the future of Europe? Once UK is leaving, it doesn't mean that 27 member states will continue as nothing had happened. Instead, we are entitled and forced to create a new EU 27, which will be different than the current one in which we all are living. So EU 27 needs a new direction, new content and new commitment from the governments, from national parliaments, but also from the stakeholders, citizens. So that's why these kind of events where we all are together considering how, or thinking, what do we expect from the future of Europe, are very timely and necessary. If I should say something in few months' time, or expect something in few months' time, we will be in the middle of transformation process where many things in Europe will be in change. And this time the change is positive. We most probably are talking about how to deepen our cooperation in defense and security issues. Terrorism, cyber and hybrid threats are new type of threats, and all the member states are quite vulnerable in front of these kind of threats. And the European added value is very obvious in these areas. So we have to put our forces together and create more secure Europe. Another area where I expect quite fast movement is the further developing ENU. We all should put our existing opinions aside for a while and think what would be the ideal currency area, and then mirror this ideal currency union to the current one. And by doing so, we can recognize what we are still missing. So we need more stable, more secure, more growth-oriented currency area. And this, I expect, will be one of the topics which we will reform. Basically, we need more strong national ownership, because during the last few years, one of the challenges what EU has faced is the fact that that national ownership has been rather weak. We have been in crisis management mode for the obvious reasons, and now it's time to move forward, and that's why we need stronger national views, strong views from stakeholders and citizens, how to further develop EU in order to fulfill all the expectations what our citizens have. So thanks very much for organizing the event, and let's have a good forward-looking discussion.
Okay, thank you. I'll switch to Portuguese if you don't mind. I think you'll hopefully have a good translation there. So the idea here is, a ideia aqui era
the idea here of this event is connected with dialogues in the European Union.
Eu brincava lá embaixo há pouco e dizia que hoje, bom,
and I was joking around, I would say that I have the easiest work today because the floor is yours, not mine. And I hope that I don't have to do anything else besides giving the floor to you, because we are here in an environment that we're trying to make it informal to enable the exchange of ideas. The first question, by using Slido, or the first invitation is for you to vote on the question that you see in the Slido. We have 2 votes, 50-50. We need someone to untie this. Do you feel that your voice is heard in the European Union? 6 votes, those who are at home. I don't know if those who are at home or following the streaming can participate. You have Slido, slido.com. You find the website of this app. You don't need to download it. You can use it directly, the website of Slido. And then the password, that code, #EU dialogue, that allows you to vote. So we have 17 answers. And the first idea, we had 100% for is our voice heard or not. Well, the result is that it was overcome by an answer where we have a war here. I'm getting addicted to it, actually. Let's try to stabilize this. Does anyone else want to answer? We have 19, 20 questions. One more yes. 20 answers, that's what I meant. 21. Well, maybe I can ask for a first comment without prejudice if you continue to vote. Mr. Vice President Katainen, I believe that you were in previous initiatives with this voting in different countries. Is that it?
Yeah, it's.
How do you, is this surprising? 2/3 of the people saying they're not heard.
Well, actually, the results are, they varies between the member states quite a lot, but normally in this voting, it's very close to 50-50. Some people think that their voice is heard, and almost equal amount of people think that their voice is not heard. This is, I mean, it always put me to place where people start asking what the Commission should do in order to make sure that people's voice is heard. And I usually answer that we do our share, our our representations in member states work hard in order to organize events and let people opportunity to give people opportunity to participate to this kind of discussions. But this is only very limited. If looking at the entire question, whether my voice is heard in EU decision making, it depends very much on the local politicians' activity, because the decision makers in EU are governments / national parliaments and the European Parliament. So Commission can do something, but not enough in order to make sure that ordinary citizens' voice is heard. You can easily see the correlation between the feeling that my voice is heard and the activism of governments. In the countries where governments are actively discussing with their citizens on EU, on issues which are decided in the EU, and the governments which are openly telling what do they expect from Europe, and they have kind of European agenda, there usually people feels that their voice is heard, because those topics are discussed in shopping malls, in marketplaces where politicians are meeting the citizens. And that's exactly what I meant when I said that we need a stronger national ownership. It's not enough that EU institutions tries to convince people. We do our share, but our owners, EU's owners, are citizens and they governments, and they should have an agenda, European agenda, and discuss about their views with the citizens. This is the only way we can make sure that ordinary Europeans' voice is heard.
For the question that I would like to ask Luís Henriques, está surpreendido com esta votação?
As with this voting, do you think that companies, investors feel that their voice is heard in European perspectives and strategies for growth, for example?
Estou bocadinho surpreendido com este resultado aqui em Portugal. I can probably try to answer in English, like that it's easier for you. As long as you promise that you won't reply in Finnish, it'll be fine by me. But I'm a bit surprised because, I mean, I'll actually go into my personal experience, probably that will help. But I think Portugal is clearly a pro-European country. Several generations have seen the significant impact that joining the EEC many years ago and now the European Union had on Portugal. So, even when we have polls, there are always the large majorities pro-European, pro-Euro. So, it's even a discussion we don't have in Portugal, whereas in certain other member states you have that. So, I was expecting somewhere more along the lines of the 50-50. However, I do admit that when I speak with businessmen and, general community, the fact is a lot of these measures, sometimes they're not tangible for them. So relating between, a result and having the notion that my voice was heard in the European Commission might be too much of a step sometimes. So probably if the question were, do you feel the benefits of belonging to the European Union, rather than specifically saying, do you feel that the European Commission hears you, probably the results would be more 80-20 or something like that. So I think here we're a bit biased probably by the question we had.
Ok, obrigado. Então vamos abrir o diálogo. Eu penso que podia, se conseguíssemos ter
Let's
aqui a
open the
primeira
dialogue.
tínhamos
I think we have the first question here.
Aqui está. Okay. First question. How to make Portugal a more attractive place for investment? What recommendation would you give, Mr. Katainen?
I'm very glad that economic recovery has come back to Portugal. Actually, it's a little bit more than a year when I last time visited Portugal, and coming from outside and comparing the general mood, I can make a difference. I can say that I can feel that the general mood is more optimistic and positive towards the future than it was 1.5 years ago. And this is a good sign because the countries in which the general mood is negative, they are usually underperformers. Of course, there were good reasons to be negative, but now many economic factors have changed towards positive direction. Especially I'm glad that export is doing well. Portugal has become, in fact, very fast manner exporting nation, significant exporting nation. And it's partially due to the reforms done during the last 5 years. So the external competitiveness has improved, and it has helped to export knowledge and products from Portugal to the other countries. Also, of course, decreasing unemployment is a good sign. Economic growth is encouraging, and the government has managed slightly to reduce the public debt also. It's a positive sign. So when looking at the future from now on, in medium term, let's talk about 3 to 5 years. Now when Portugal is in good economic times, this moment should be used for improving general environment to be more favorable for foreign direct investments and job creation. Now we are talking about, for instance, investments to vocational education. So when the country is exporting heavily, you need well-trained, well-educated professionals. And that's why Commission thinks that Portugal should pay attention to vocational training and especially to the quality of it. Another thing is that there's a need to improve the quality of teachers' training. Those are long-term investments to the future, and it makes the society more resilient than it is at the moment. Of course, there are a couple of other significant issues which should be addressed, and one of them is the non-performing loans in the bank's balance sheets. As long as there's a significant burden on banks' balance sheets, they cannot improve financing small and medium-sized enterprises, for instance, which is the backbone of Portugal's economy. So that's why everybody knows that it's a very difficult task to deal with the issue, but there's no other way but to try to find a solution to this. And final point, in order to be prepared for external shocks and in order to improve the resilience of society and in order to improve the business confidence, the reduction of public debt is utmost important.
We have a question. Luís, I'll go to you in a minute. We have a question here from Tiago Marques. He asks, did the EU change its view regarding the need for growth and investment, or did the circumstances change? It's a very, I think, straight to the point question, meaning that now you're talking here about education, investment, infrastructure, okay, dealing with legacy, but basically invest and think in the future. A few years ago, we would be talking about austerity, debt reduction, flexible labor markets instead of education. So read here in Portugal as basically make firing more easy for companies, which was kind of polemic in the middle of the crisis. So it's a different perspective. And how do you explain it to Tiago Marques, who is asking us this need for growth and investment? What has changed in Brussels?
Well, very little has changed in Brussels, but very much has changed in Portugal. So if the country is in crisis, and there are reasons for the crisis, it was not, I mean, the reasons for the crisis in Portugal was not only because of external factors. There were lots of reasons, internal reasons why government, or why economy could not do better than it did, and the country lost the credibility. So that was the reason why it could not raise funds from the market, and that's why financial assistance package was needed. But then the authorities started to make reforms, which were very painful. Many people have sacrificed a lot, and it has been politically and humanly taken extremely hard time period for ordinary Portuguese. But now those reforms are paying or have started to bear fruit. For instance, the increasing export is partially the result of reforms done before. And the country has recovered, and the confidence is back. People outside of Portugal trust on Portugal. They trust on authorities that they are capable to take care of the country and continue the reforms. And now we have to look forward, how to improve the entire situation. There are some legacy problems like high public debt. In good economic times, it's much easier to pay the debt back than in bad economic times. And I've been in politics in national level before, and I know that good economic times are very difficult in a sense that then people tend to think that, okay, there's no need to do reforms, there's no need to pay the debt back. But you have more than enough experiences what it is to do reforms in bad economic times. So please use the good economic times to strengthen your society, and that's why decreasing public debt is important, but also investments to human capital, like vocational training, teachers training and research.
Thank you. Luís, como vê
How do you see the good performance of the exports mentioned by the Vice President? How do you explain this? And maybe a question that we'd all like to know. As the AICEP President, what is of interest and makes your life easy, and what makes it difficult when I have to present and introduce Portugal as a destination for investment?
The exports first, and then we talk about Portugal as an investment and a business destination, and what are the main competitive factors that we consider as very, very strong for Portugal, and we've been having good results up till now. So regarding exports, I think there's the Commissioner mentioned that obviously we had a strong period of reform in the past few years, but I also think there's another aspect which is extremely important, and this is something that has to be said, is that our companies, our economic tissue, really had an extremely resilient attitude towards the crisis. And we had, I think, here the fortunate combinations that some companies in 2008, 2009 started understanding that, you know, it's just not enough to have the internal Portuguese market as my objective. I really need to go across borders. And first I have this huge untapped potential, which is Europe, 500 million consumers, where I can move around freely and I'm open for business anywhere in Europe. So this was the first movement, and we see that actually in our trade balance. So 75% of our exports are geared towards the European Union. And on the other hand, the crisis, I think, basically accelerated this. But at the end of the day, it's just not putting a positive note on this. The real fact is this. Our companies showed, one, they were competitive, because, you can't change from exporting less than 30% of your GDP to exporting more than 40% GDP unless you are ready for that and you are competitive. Because otherwise, you could try selling abroad, but you wouldn't be able to. So first, they showed that they were competitive. A lot of them were very, very competitive. Secondly, they showed an enormous resilience, and they understood that, I have to go through a transition period. I have to be fast as possible. So that's why they turned so strongly towards Europe. And they have simultaneously also started a diversification approach towards the markets. So we've seen that non-EU exports have also continued growing. There were some regional focuses that nowadays are more and more spread around. But I think here, and this is probably the most positive word that I can share, is the attitude our companies and our businessmen had was impressive. So they basically, they started understanding the phenomena, but the reaction was very, very impressive and very, very efficient and effective. So regarding exports, I think that this is the main point, is we really had a structural change of paradigm from our business community, and the amount of businessmen, the amount of exporters grew immensely. I mean, even in the companies that we follow at AICEP, our portfolio companies more than doubled in these past few years. So the companies that wanted to export. And the results are here. So this is the resilience of the businessman was very, very clear on this.
I think you can bring to the foreign direct investment. So which reforms do companies perceive as having had more effect on the Portuguese economy in the last years, and which ones should we be probably focusing on? And I believe that can lead to how easy you can attract foreign direct investment, maybe. So
I think so we can break this into two aspects. First, there are several competitive structural advantages that the country has. And we have to mention this, because these are macro, long-term advantages that we have. They weren't created last year or weren't created 5 years ago. I mean, the first thing that I think, and this, in my opinion, will be the factor of production of the 21st century, and Portugal is very, very well placed there, is talent. So the new generation coming into the market is extremely talented. They are trained in universities that rank among the best in Europe, in the world. So European companies know that when they hire in Portugal, either engineers or economists or managers, they know that they will be having talent which has exactly the same or even better training than the ones they can get in their own universities, in their own countries. And the second thing, still within talent, which is absolutely fundamental to point out, and I think this also shows how Portugal can play an important role in the EU, is it's very, very important to understand that 80% of our young people that when they join the job market, 80% of them speak at least, and I repeat this, at least 2 foreign languages. And this is a unique combination that we have. We're obviously a small country, so we don't have hundreds of thousands of engineers coming into the market every year, but the fact is that the amount of talent that we're bringing into the market is very, very highly qualified, and I'd say ready for this new generation and new challenge of business. This is the first thing. The other structural and competitive advantage that we have and that we need to point out, one is obviously our location. I mean, we're clearly a platform in Europe that not only we can do, and we do a lot of business with Europe, but we also have to be seen within Europe as a platform towards the Atlantic, whether the North or the South Atlantic. And so we are definitely a privileged platform to do business both in Africa and South America, but also in North America. And I think, again, going back to the European theme, this is one of the greatest things about Europe. I mean, it's diversity. Europe has to leverage the diversity of its member states and use that to go to a new level. So we can't have, let's say, a one-size-fits-all approach. We have to see that different regions, different countries within Europe have specific characteristics, and we can use this for our own benefit, for our own collective benefit. I mean, I'm sure that, for instance, if I want to trade with certain countries where Finland is closer to or has specific tie trades, probably it's easier for me, Portuguese company, to set up a partnership with a colleague in Finland, and he'll take care of that part of the world. And we need to work out like that. And so I think our talent, our location, our infrastructure, whether it is communications or transport, is...
Which are the minuses? Or which areas do you perceive as more difficult to sell to foreigners?
Well, I'd say the first thing that we need to...
Just making sure, because I think the Vice President was here mentioning, so this idea of investing in educational training and training, not only to high level, but to
technical level.
Technical level, which is something that some people point out as being difficult. I've talked to some consultants and people in the SME areas that say now we are having some difficulty. It's not even that we want high management positions. We want at technical level good people to work, and it's not that easy. Do you feel that? Which areas?
Not yet. But I think it's a reality. It's something that we need to look at. So when we look at on a long-term perspective as a challenge for Portugal, and this for me is clear. So I wouldn't say it's a minus now, but it can become a minus. So we need to be very attentive about this. As I mentioned, we have this fantastic talent coming into the market, and it's paying off. We see that with the investment that we're bringing from abroad. But we need to keep up this. The amount of talent coming into the market needs to keep up on a constant basis. So we don't see yet, I speak obviously also with a lot of consultants and a lot of investors, and I hear this concern. Where should I locate in Portugal? Because I might be, if I want to have a software development center with 500 people, are you sure that in Lisbon I'll still have access to talent or not? And this starts to become a question. However, the figures that we have still don't show that we have a hindrance or a bottleneck there. This can become in the future. Nevertheless, we see that there is also some adjustment on the market price of wages, especially for certain qualifications or certain specifications. I think that's absolutely normal. We cannot react at that as being a bottleneck that we can't go through. We just have to understand that there will be some adjustments, especially for those areas where there is more demand.
Obrigado. Não sei se alguém tem alguma questão na audiência que queira colocar.
If there's any question in the audience that you'd like to raise with the roving mic, if you do, I'd like to ask you to raise your hand. If I don't see you, please insist. And if not, then let's use our platform where...
If I may, I'm probably just taking advantage of the fact that we have one of the vice presidents of the European Commission here with us. No. I think there's a point here. I mean, I can tell you my personal experience. I grew up in Brussels, so I'm actually a product of the European school. I did most of my schooling in Brussels, so I know very well the area and some of the main thoughts going on. Like you said, a lot of things haven't changed in Brussels in these many years, for good or for bad. But I really think that in certain areas, and Portugal here, again, our population really is a cosmopolitan population. We've been in this globalization business for 400 years. It's not new for us. And we can really be part of this construction of having, European Union looking towards the global opportunities. And one of the things that I think that has been very, very successful in the past few years, and I speak based on my own experience, the first thing that we need as citizens, but I would also say as businessmen, as people trying to deal in the European market, we need to know each other more and more and more and better. I had this specific privilege, so yeah, I grew up among all the nationalities in Europe, so it's easy for me to deal with them. I understand that culturally we have our own differences, but there's above all a huge area where we have a base level working field where we can work together and we can grow a lot of things. But I think this should be an objective for the EU, is to ensure that we have great companies in Europe, and we should use those companies that have pan-European operations to ensure that more of our young people work in Europe, get to know better.
For workers.
We need that. We need our young professionals, or sometimes probably more senior professionals, but we need them to know better Europe, to have different experience. And I think this can be leveraged through the strong European companies that we have. And they're not only Central European companies. We have strong companies.
So we are making the 30 years of Erasmus, I think, this year for students. So this idea of so it's one of the challenges of the deepening of the monetary union is exactly this idea of having people moving around. So that is still a big challenge in Europe, the mobility of people. Luís is kind of proposing or arguing that more can be done, at least at the company level within the EU. How do you view that?
I mean, Erasmus Plus is is probably the crown jewel of European integration. It has already allowed more than 4 million people to study or have a training session in another EU country. But it's too little. This year we are celebrating 30th anniversary of Erasmus program, and I'm a great fan of it. Not only because I myself have been Erasmus student in UK. Carlos Moedas and Federica Mogherini, we three are in the existing current commission, the ones who have benefited from Erasmus program personally. But I would like to put more focus on not only to university students in Erasmus, which of course is very important also in the future that they use the opportunity, but also teachers and vocational students. So Erasmus can already now provide exchange place for teachers who already have a job in their home country. And everybody can imagine that if there were hundreds of thousands teachers using this opportunity every year, what kind of investment it would be to the teachers' skills, because they would learn something from the other countries, from other people. The same thing applies with those who are studying some profession, like plumber or engineers or nurses. If they spend half a year or 1 year in another country, the job market would be already wider than the existing one, the home country job market. And also, it's again, for them, it would be a great investment to their kind of human capital. So from human capital perspective, from job market perspective, we should encourage people to look at the opportunities for what Erasmus can use. Also from single market point of view and from sustainable EMU point of view, we need more labor mobility. So basically everything is already now possible, but we just have to encourage people to do so. Just a little idea to the Portugal's government. The Minister of Education, for instance, could set up a program, for instance, for teachers. That there's a target that 10,000 or let's say 2,000 teachers per year from Portugal would use Erasmus opportunity or something like this, just to make it kind of official target, because money is already there, program is already there. It's not a matter of financing or anything else like this. So it's just a kind of a matter of encouragement.
So, sorry, explain me that better. So the program is already there in the sense that teachers could go abroad with EU financing.
Yes, yes. Teachers can already use Erasmus program for exchange program. Same thing with vocational trainers. Okay. So why not to use, because Europe is offering this.
A challenge for the Portuguese government and an answer to
well,
Luís' proposal.
Now we need to enlarge this also to businesses.
Yeah, also the businesses to entrepreneurs. Yeah.
So let me, time just flies, so let me just come back here to some questions. May I go back still a bit? Okay, just because it leads to this, I just want to answer these two questions before we move to the other voting that we have. So you say the EU after breakfast has to be different. In your view, main institutional changes, that would be interesting to have your view on that. Because this idea of deepening in a point where you actually say or complain, I'm not sure if I'm saying too much, that national governments do not help European institutions to make Europe more Europe. What do you think that can be done in this context?
This is an interesting question, because it asks what kind of institutional changes are needed. It may be too difficult for me to answer, because I wouldn't put emphasis to the institutional changes in first place. First, we have to decide what do we expect and what do we want more in terms of substance. For instance, if we want more cooperation, more EU capability to address security threats, such as terrorism or cyber or hybrid threats. We have to decide this first, whether we want this or not. And then we have to start looking at what kind of institutional changes it means, if it means anything. For instance, in the fields of defense, our current treaties allows member states to do basically whatever they want. If member states wanted to decide to move on common defense, it's already now possible. One of my proposals has been that we need, or we should create, a European cyber and hybrid defense capability. Basically, in concrete terms, it would mean that if there is a cyber attack against one of our member states or some institutions, we would have well-organized, well-trained European capability to address these threats. And this goes well into the current treaties. Current treaties allows us to create a joint or common defense on various issues. And now it's just up to the member states to decide whether they want to participate to this. For instance, permanent structured cooperation is a way where those countries who want to create this kind of capability could work. And I don't envisage that many institutional changes, at least in foreseeable future.
The thing is that we have to first think of what actually do we want this union for. Yes. Do you feel at this point, and the European Commission has proposed several, you have been the author of some of these reports on ways, future of Europe, ways to develop our union. So, but do you feel that governments are actually engaging and countries are engaging in that discussion, that reflection, in order to have a position that is consistent and well thought on which Europe are we working for?
Governments are engaging more and more. There's a big difference between now the current situation and a situation a year ago. A year ago, we still were more or less like in crisis management mode, and we were talking about the existential crisis after Brexit. But now, for instance, yesterday when I had a chance to discuss with Portugal's defense and finance ministers, we had excellent discussions with the two ministers. They both were looking at the future. The defense minister, we were discussing about the future of defense, the ideas which I just mentioned. And with the finance minister, we were talking about the future of EMU. So now the governments are changing their position towards the future, and that is very, very important, and this is very much needed because, for instance, currency union, EMU is not perfect, and now it's just a matter of political will whether we want to fix it or not.
One final question before our vote, because it connects to some of your thoughts on defense. We have a question, an anonymous question here. Como é que os Estados-membros da União Europeia se podem juntar para combater o terrorismo? How do member states
to fight terrorism?
Which is something that is coming through our media day in, day out. What can be done? What should be done?
Actually, everything, or probably the most important thing is that security authorities exchange their information, because criminals are going cross-border as easily as whoever. And that's why authorities in different member states must know the movement of those who are dangerous. But, and I know that authorities are improving, even though we don't have a European policy on this, because this is the competence which is in the hands of member states. But still, on voluntary basis, the authorities are exchanging more information than before. But unfortunately, what we have seen from the news, latest news, for instance, from yesterday, the way the terrorists are behaving or attacking against normal citizens is rather different than before. And it's sometimes quite difficult to identify who is dangerous and who is not. But anyway, there are a whole range of issues in which to create a cooperation could create European added value to normal citizens.
Thank you for your answer. Maybe I will go to a second part of our talk where we'll talk a bit about more investment. And I would invite, again, people to vote. Do seu ponto de vista, em que setor é mais necessário investimento em Portugal?
In which sector do we need more
Temos 4
investment in
opções para
Portugal?
escolher.
We have 4 options to
Convidamos
choose
novamente
from.
todos os presentes
Invite
através
all
da
us
aplicação
present through
Slido.
the application slido.com. And when you go in, you have a password which is #EU Dialogue. And you can vote both here and those who are outside this room, because we are in streaming, live streaming at the moment. 9 votes.
Research and innovation in the education. No infrastructures, no ELF until now. So we can start commenting maybe on this. A bit of ELF there. So half-half on the first two and then... Portanto, as respostas até agora, com cerca de 20 votos, temos
20 votes,
metade,
we have
50%, não é bem assim, a
not
educação,
really, but almost
45%
education, 45% in research and innovation, and then infrastructures and in health we have very, very low values. So,
surprised by this also, to have those two in Portugal? Do you think your message is being heard, at least in our audience?
Well, I'm very happy. I'm very happy, and Carlos Moedas is certainly very happy too, because infrastructure in Portugal is in relatively good shape. Well, yes, and now the question is how to mobilize the talent which is already here. Well, I mean, people speak different languages, and there is a lot of innovative companies, etc. And also how to make Portugal as a society more resilient. So that's why, I mean, Portugal as a trading country, fully open, small economy, must pay attention to the resilience. In order to benefit from globalization, the society must be resilient. Whatever comes from external factors, the people can adapt to the new situations, and the economy can adapt to the new situations. That's why investments to research and innovations is extremely important. It mobilizes the talent which already exists in Portugal. Also the education, because it's the investments to human capital in principal manner. The latest reforms done in this country has surprised actually many of us, because you can already now see improvement in the quality of education. If you look at OECD PISA study, there are 2 countries, EU countries, Portugal and Estonia, who has improved the quality of education significantly in relatively short time period. And this shows that you can, even though education investments are usually seen as very long-term investments, but you can already got results in relatively short time period if you've done reforms right. So this is one factor or one issue which Portuguese could be happy about. So very good result. Investments to education and research and innovation strengthen the resilience of the society and boost economic growth and job creation in long term. Very good.
Luís, what do you say? Are you surprised by these results? People that come to you and ask for information, are they from those sectors?
No, not at all. I think first, education actually goes back to what I was telling you. I think this is a challenge and we need to keep up, and we need to be churning out year on talent, good talent coming up to the market, because that's the only way we'll have to keep on attracting strong investment and also high value added investment. And we've seen that, for instance, in the past few years in the service sector. AICEP in the past 3 years has brought to Portugal about 50,000 jobs just on the service area, just on the service sectors. And I remember that many years ago we started off with small call centers that then grew in scale. And nowadays what we are discussing and bringing more and more are engineering centers, are R&D centers. I mean, we cannot forget that we opened a month and a half ago a huge digital delivery center from Mercedes-Benz, decided to settle here. Next week I should be opening the Vestas Engineering Center in Oporto. So we're bringing more and more. But this is something that we need to keep up. We just can't stop and say, no, this is something that we need to keep on investing in education and ensuring that our talent, whether at vocational training level or at university level, keeps on being among the best in the world. Because the other advantages, structural advantages that we have culturally will always be a plus. So if we have the adequate technical training plus the cultural edge, I'm sure that will be very, very competitive for many, many years. Regarding the R&D, it really isn't a surprise. I think this is a path that we've been working on, and it's something that our companies more and more understand the benefits of the R&D. A recent study by Cotec showed that companies that invested more in R&D actually were able to have further results in exports, and that basically there's a correlation between your capacity to tap into new markets and your R&D investment. So in T-1 investing in R&D regenerates results in T+1 and T+2, especially in more competitive markets. So this is really isn't a surprise. You asked me a few minutes ago, it can't all be good, because otherwise we would be in a different circumstance. So it can't be all fantastic. And I think the major hindrance that we have at this moment, I mean, we're going through a very, very good moment in terms of competitiveness factors. We have an adequate setting, for instance, in labor law to set up businesses in several areas. So we're not talking only in the industrial area. I was talking about the service sector, which is also growing very, very strongly. But I think that Portugal needs to keep on working on its specific segmented strategy of raising its notoriety. I mean, and we at AICEP, we work a lot on this. We try to focus on specific segments where we've been able to attract foreign direct investment or even reinvestment here in Portugal. And we keep on working with similar sets of customers trying to foster their investment or bring investment to Portugal. And I think this is a work that we need to keep on doing, because Portugal has been seen for many, many years, as the country, great sun, great olive oil, great wine. It's all true. But if you look at our trade balance, actually that's not the only thing that we do. Our major exports, along with tourism, are metallo-mechanic components, vehicles, automotive components, electrical machinery, medicines, pulp and paper. So we have a very, very sophisticated and diversified trade balance, which is good for the country. And we need to keep on working on that. So basically it's a work in progress. There is always, for certain specific segments, there are always certain aspects where we can improve our competitiveness, but overall we're going through a good moment, and we need to capitalize on that.
With its such a low value in infrastructures. I'm recalling, for instance, in the answers that the Vice President gave to us in negotiations just yesterday, he was mentioning that at least in some countries there's infrastructures for tourism, and that, of course, in Portugal in the last year has been very strong. I would probably expect maybe that, although there are good infrastructures, roads, of course, we have all that and other things, maybe for tourism there could be room for further improvements.
I actually separate that. So basically I think that when people look at this question, or at least how I would read this, we're talking here about basic infrastructure. So roads, ports, airports, telecommunication infrastructure, where Portugal actually stands out. If you see any world competitiveness ranking, Portugal on this specific matter really stands out. So it makes sense that we don't feel, we obviously still have a lot of work in the railway connections between ports and the rest of Europe. So there's still some work to do, but I don't think this is a structural hindrance at the moment. However, what you are saying, and yes, I see a need for further investment there, and we've been receiving actually quite a lot of investment on the area, is on the tourism side. But I'm not talking about infrastructure. I'm talking more about, tangible investment in new hotels, offerings that are segmented towards other segments of the market, oriented at other segments of the market. So I think the challenge there it really is to increase the portfolio of our offering rather than working on the infrastructure. So it's basically spur our businessmen and to do new investments and also bring investors from abroad with different strategies for other segments for them to operate and use Portugal as a destination for that.
Mr. Katainen, I'll go to one of the questions that we want to hear from you. So just this morning, and I know it's already in the questions that our audience put here in Slido, which is how is the Juncker plan going in Portugal? So there was just this morning, there's new figures for the execution. So is Portugal doing well? Where are still opportunities to be tapped that should be used? Explain us a bit how you view this at this point.
Portugal is doing very well in terms of using the financing opportunities what the Juncker plan offers. Portugal is number four in terms of using EFSI. When you look at how much EFSI has provided investments or financing per GDP. So it's very good start, but only the sky is the limit, basically. Portugal can use EFSI opportunities even more than what it has done. Especially, I would like to raise the opportunity for venture capital. If there is anybody who knows any venture capitalist, Portuguese venture capitalist around, just let him or her know that EFSI can help venture capital funds to expand their businesses in Portugal. Same, of course, applies everywhere in Europe. But when looking at the small companies which supposed to expand their business and which supposed to grow to middle-sized companies and even giants later on, they don't usually need bank loans, or they cannot even use the bank loans because they don't have anything to offer in a kind of the collateral opportunities are very, very limited. But what they need is capital. And this is something what EFSI can provide if there's a need for this. So this is one opportunity. Another one is to establish investment platforms, which basically means to pool together big amount of small size investments. And there is another opportunity in this platform thinking, which is to use structural funds as a capital in the platform together with EFSI financing. So this is the way Portugal could leverage the existing structural funds. And if anybody get interested in this, we have technical advisory services which are free of charge for public authorities. We take a little fee from private companies, but if somebody wants to know more about platform setting, we can help in this formation process. And just to final advertisement, if there's any company who is planning to invest in Europe, also to Portugal, and you cannot necessarily get full financing from the market, you can always contact European Investment Bank and especially the local office of it. No need to go to Luxembourg, just to visit the local branch of EIB, which is usually in the capital of your country. So EFSI is easy to use. It does not need any approval from public authorities. It's a part of the European Investment Bank, and bank have individual clients.
So the criteria for those kinds of projects, maybe Luís can also help. The criteria for being eligible and then chosen for financing, which is, what are the main criteria? Let's put it this way.
The main criteria
depends from case to case, of course, but just trying to understand a bit.
Yeah, the main criteria is that it must be economically viable project, which is facing suboptimal financing conditions. So for the various reasons. For instance, the risk profile of the project is the kind which makes it difficult to finance purely by the banks or other financial institutions. But most of the financing should come from private sector. It also means that there should be some private component in the investment. If it's not entirely private investment, then it should be in the form of public-private partnership. So basically those are the main elements. EFSI financing is not grant financing, it's a loan or guarantee or equity investment, and EIB want to get its money back at the end of the day. But it's offering something else than what market can offer. And the basic idea is to use public guarantees in order to crowd in private liquidity from the market.
So now that we've had some advertisement from the European Commission, I'll allow some advertisement from the AICEP also. No, because we have one of our participants asks, como é que a AICEP apoia os investidores? How does AICEP support investors?
Okay.
We're briefly just trying to understand a bit how does this work and how can we help?
Well, AICEP can basically work as a one-stop shop for investors in Portugal. Obviously, we're more geared towards, so our real mandate is for projects above 25 million euros or companies that sell above 75 million euros in a consolidated perspective. But the fact is we receive much more investors than those that fit in these two categories. So basically, AICEP can help you at several levels. First, it can look into the licensing issues that you have towards implementing your own business here. It can look into the financing options that you have on the public side. So, for instance, we send a lot of companies to the EIB when we feel that their project can be supported by the Juncker plan. But we also deal, and this is part of our operation, we have a small banking operation. We also are the ones that provide the incentives, the financial and fiscal benefits for the industrial and service projects that we have in Portugal. So all of these large projects that we hear and show up in Jornal de Negócios on a regular basis, all of them usually have an incentive component that has been evaluated and approved by AICEP. And this is actually European money. These are structural funds that we use. We combine them also with fiscal benefits to ensure that they have the adequate support. But so as an agency, we give financing options, we give licensing support, we give advice on where to locate yourself. So we actually have tools that enable an investor to understand what is their optimal location within the country, given the restrictions that they might have from a client, from access to a certain resource, whatever. And on top of that, we also try to bridge, so especially if you're coming from abroad, we try to bridge your operation with local operations. So introducing you also to local companies. We do a lot of events with the local suppliers to ensure that you are able to fully integrate yourself in Portugal. So this is, broadly speaking, how we can help. We have a one-stop shop approach.
Não sei se alguém na audiência gostava de colocar uma questão. Temos aqui participante, por favor. Pedia, por favor,
As a question, I would ask you to identify and please be short. Good afternoon.
Actually, I'm finishing, but I'm student still. I'll try to make the question in English so that it's easier for all of us. So I'm going back to the opportunities of investment into the sectors where we think that we might invest or we need to invest. But apart from that, or beside that, what do you think that are the structural reforms that we still have to do in order to increase our potential of growth, or to make sure that we are in the right way and things are in fact getting better, and we are not just in an optimistic bubble that might blow sometime? And that's it.
Thank you. Let me start by mentioning one sector which is very strong in Portugal and which I believe could be one of the sectors which can provide robust economic growth in the future. It's a renewable energy sector. there's a lot of knowledge in this area, in this country, and lots of technology innovations in this country, and there's a constant need or endless need for renewable energy. So instead of just producing energy, the technology itself can be or is already now a sellable advantage in the Portugal's economy. So I believe in this sector. In terms of reform needs, I mean, structural, one of the key challenges which must be addressed is the non-performing loans in the bank's balance sheets. Because as long as this is a problem, it means that the banks cannot finance as much Portugal's economy as there's a need. It's especially an obstacle to small and medium-sized companies, but also individuals. So I know that this is very, very difficult issue to deal with, but anyway, this is a structural challenge which must be addressed. The second thing, what Commission has identified as an opportunity, but currently as a challenge, is to improve the performance of some public services, especially healthcare and also state-owned companies. So there's more efficiency needs in these sectors, and new technology can provide solutions to, for instance, healthcare, and this should be look in that manner in the future. And then it's not a problem at the moment, but already we have discussed quite intensively about the quality of education, especially vocational training. So in the medium term, it's an opportunity which should be addressed. So those are the areas which I would like to mention.
So let me follow. Do you want to follow up? No. Okay. So let me go to Luís. May I? Do you want to comment on? No. Okay. Just this idea of non-performing loans, which you are mentioning, and it's been mentioning a lot. This looks like, in Portugal at least, and I believe in other countries, like we're fighting, you know, the windmills of Don Quixote, which is something that we've been fighting and fighting and fighting, but we never actually understand what it is. So what is lacking? A more forceful strategy, centralized in the European Union, from the Commission, from the institutions, setting the guidelines for countries to tackle that definitely? Or do you need countries to use it, but then you have all the difficulties that we know about recapitalizing banks in countries such as Portugal. So what is lacking here to deal with that? Because this seems like a phantom that never goes away.
This is a very market-sensitive issue, and that's why there's no, I don't want to go too deep on this, but I know that authorities have been working in this field intensively. And of course, you have to take into account the limits of public authorities' contribution to financial institutions, and then the sustainability of the financial system. So you have to tailor-made the solutions to individual cases. There are principles from state aid point of view, from competition law point of view, which are already there in the EU level. But otherwise, you have to look at the individual cases.
So
it's up to the member states to decide, but the solutions must be compatible with the EU competition law, because we want to, or everybody wants to avoid a situation where the market will be distorted by inaccurate public subsidies, for instance.
Luís, do you want to add something?
Yes, I do understand that the restrictions that the EU competition law sometimes have to bring, but it's part of having a level playing field for everybody, and we need to accept that. I mean, if we want to have a single market, we need to live with this. I think that's obvious. But on the other hand, I think that we can't always have what I would say a one-size-fits-all approach. And for instance, the Commissioner was saying that we're doing well on the Juncker plan, but I think we're number 4 on a relative status, right? We're not number 4 Europe-wide. But I think we can have a bigger ambition there. However, on the other hand, and this goes back to, that's why I raised my finger before, as the Commissioner has mentioned, and very, very well, we definitely do have a challenge that's still going on, getting better, but still going on the financial sector. I mean, it's this NPL issue, but it's not only that NPL issue, it's more of a broader issue that we have. And I think that Portugal, for instance, at this moment, clearly is a country that we have great access to structural funds, and we need to understand that's part of the European cohesion that allows us to go further and to really incentivize good projects. However, we definitely also need equity mechanisms, because at the end of the day, we have a stock of debt. We'll need to sort it out, but either we sort this out in 100 years or 50 years, or we try to sort it out faster. And I think from some of these mechanisms that Europe has been putting in place, Portugal clearly could benefit from having, I'd say, more of a portfolio approach on an equity side. What do I mean by this? I mean that if there were more equity mechanisms that we could access, even within the Juncker plan, I think you would have much, much more demand. Because at the end of the day, as you were saying, and very, very well, the first criteria to have access to a Juncker plan credit is basically to be viable. But obviously to be viable, you need to be stable and sustainable in terms of that. Now, if you are a new company, that's not an issue because you're starting from scratch. However, if you already have some backlog, or this can be an issue. And I think here, sometimes we need to ponder the specific moment or the specific macroeconomic scenario that the country has to understand how we can help its companies go across and make the further step. But again, obviously within EU competition borderlines, because otherwise we would all be getting into a mess. We could be very, very happy now, but I'm sure that we'll be very, very unhappy later on. So this is something that we cannot play around with.
We are reaching, I just want to go to this last question that we have here. We have 2 more questions on funds. How can companies use it, or European financial incentives? I believe we've talked about it, but I would like to go to another topic there. We have Manuel Azevedo is putting a question asking, how do you build the spirit of mobility with 500 euros? This idea of very low salaries in Portugal conflicts with the idea of competitiveness through low salaries and with the ideas of adjustment through fiscal devaluation that we had last year. So basically salaries adjusting as a way to gain competitiveness. So there's this tension from the recommendations that were put to the country in the last years and what people perceive as a fair salary for their jobs. So how do you view this idea of salaries? How do you create mobility? This is a European perspective of how with 500 euros, so around 20% of the Portuguese workers earn a little more than 500 euros. How do you build mobility? How do you build a country with so many people earning 500 euros and still hearing that maybe they should earn less?
Well, the wages must be set in the national and in local level. So there cannot be European-wide wage policy because the circumstances varies a lot. 500 euros is a small salary, and it's better not to give advices to employers and employees, organizations how to address it, but it must be set in the local level to the conditions which exist in the local level. The mobility, if I understood correctly, how to encourage people to be mobile once the salary is very small. It's of course difficult, but I mean, Europe should be one labor market. So other countries, other companies in other countries can offer different opportunities for those people who are willing to look at this opportunity. I don't encourage everybody to move from the country, but it's always good to remind that Europe is already now one labor market. So all the countries are not in the same position in terms of attracting people, and labor market is very diversified. Some expert level jobs could be better paid than some other jobs. This is the case in all the member states. So also entrepreneurs could be more mobile, so coming to Portugal and establish a business here and create their own life here. So yeah,
a lot of startups moving.
That's happening, and we just of course want to encourage this to happen even more, because it creates a new business opportunities and more jobs to local people too.
Luís, is this a question of salaries a question for attracting FDI here?
No, we're focusing on attracting. I mean, if it's part of our competitive equation, yes, let's face it, it's a fact, but it really isn't a decisive factor. The type of investment that we're attracting towards Portugal requires certain skills. Some of them are technical skills. For instance, in the aeronautical sector, they look specifically at certain high-level technical training. They're not looking in certain areas for only university graduates. But the fact is, these are all high-value jobs. So the type of projects that we've been bringing to Portugal and the type of reinvestment that we've been bringing to Portugal usually has a high innovation component that enables automatically a high value add. So the salary issue isn't that much of a factor. On this on the industrial side. On the service sector, it is it's more of a relevant part of the equation. But again, as we move towards more and more high value added services, it will be less and less of a concern. And actually what we'll see is that some of these salaries will start converging into higher salaries. So when you were saying before that, some consultants already said there were some restrictions on people, on the overall figures, we don't see that. You might have that local factor, but we're still not there. I don't have any data that proves that. However, and this is normal also due to the high value add of some of the services and some of the activities, yes, salaries are adjusting. It's part of our improvement.
So we're reaching almost the end of our conversation. We still have a vote, and I would recall everyone here. Eu lembro todos aqui que podem votar no Join, não votem ainda.
I would like to remind you that you can vote on
podem votar no slido.com, na página, não é preciso fazer o download da aplicação. Quem está a ver por fora, quem está a ver em streaming também pode fazer, aplicando, usando depois o hashtag EU Dialogue.
And as I was saying, we are reaching the end of our debate. I would like to highlight some strong ideas of what we debated here with Luís, Castro, Henriques and Jyrki Katainen. Europe is looking for a new direction. It's exiting a crisis management towards a reflection on what must be the future of Europe, what Europe we are looking for, what Europe are we building. Portugal is in a recovery mode, and it seems if it's not totally safe, there is at least some trust, some confidence that it might be sustainable with the reforms that were made in the past, or with elements of structural strength of the Portuguese economy, which must be presented as such. Education and research are the main areas of research where it should not be the main bets, at least this is the opinion of the participants in the annual conference of business. And European funds are being properly used, but they can be even better in different areas. And this is a call for the stakeholders to contact directly with institutions that are currently managing the European Investment Bank. AICEP can help, of course, in different areas. Now this is the last poll, the last voting of our morning, which is an answer, a curiosity as regards our first question, which is if you think that after this event the knowledge about European Union
Yeah, 9 votes now and a very positive answer. Until now, let's wait a bit. We have been having around 30 answers. Let's wait. como eu dizia, podem votar todos os que estão aqui e os que estão fora e não estejam a ver por streaming no site slido.com com o hashtag, com a password hashtag EUDialogue. So, Vice President, you have to come more often to Portugal. We have the sun and, and good food and wine and olive oil and all the things that Luís can tell you all about it.
This might be a challenge, but we're the third safest country in the world, so it's a global index that actually states that. And our main competitor is actually Iceland.
Okay.
So I think on this area, you know, if you really want to have a safe life with a lot of quality of life, Portugal clearly ranks very,
so
very well.
Not in relative
we're
terms.
challenging.
Actually
we're here, you know, competing with Iceland. So I think we definitely have competitive advantages on that area.
Exactly. This is probably the reason why there are increasing amount of Finns moving to Portugal.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Vice President, do you want to comment on this? Are you happy with the results? Is this usually like this?
Usually discussions and reflections like this increases everybody's understanding about EU, because EU doesn't mean only the European Commission. We are just a institution which is running the show and implementation. So that's why these kind of reflections are very important, because I have also learned more. I could tick yes or sim, saying that my knowledge of the EU has increased because I have learned, for instance, from you a lot. And so my knowledge about Portugal, i.e. EU, is much better today than it was before I came here. So we need more like this, and we need to find a joint path forward. And this kind of discussions helps to identify what do we expect from the future of Europe, and it's a precondition for a strong commitment to further develop Europe. Thank you very much.
Right.
No, well, no, not at all. I was worried at the beginning if we were going to have 100% hit, because someone could actually wonder whether the result was manipulated or not. But I think this was really an opportunity to learn a bit more. I think Commissioner Katainen clearly identified some of the main avenues and the main concerns that Europe has at this moment. I would really reinforce this comment you were saying. Obviously, the European Commission is the fundamental component of the European Union, but it's not the only. So there must be really a collective effort towards a better Europe, and that's joining several pieces. So I thank you for this opportunity. I'm sure I actually learned much, much more than you did with me, but thank you very much.
So, Mr. Vice President, we are finishing. The last word is for you. You're saying in the beginning we need a better Europe, and we, the Commission, cannot do it alone. We need to have governments doing so. How do you think we can actually do that, besides, of course, this dialogues and being open to questions from people in the several member states? How can countries contribute more actively? And what are your plans within the Commission to promote this type of idea of which Europe we want? How can we reach there in the next few months?
In next few months, if looking at where we are at the moment, we are in the middle of the process where UK is leaving EU. In other words, there will be new EU 27. And in few months' time, we will see a fast development in various fronts, because many member states and stakeholders want to further develop Europe. There are majority in Europe who thinks that integrated Europe is much better than nationalistic Europe. And I know that Portugal is one of the countries where the support to integration is very, very strong. So what we need now, in concrete terms, we need more national discussion. What do we expect from the future of Europe? The government, the national parliaments, but also labor organizations, business associations, other civil society organizations should be actively having this debate and also advising and putting pressure on governments which direction EU should be further developed. I personally want to see more protective Europe, not protectionism, but protective in terms of deepening security and defense cooperation. I want my 7 and 11 years old daughters to live more secure Europe in the future, and that's why I'm working for this. Also, I want to reform EMU to be more resilient for the future challenges ahead of us. Also, I want to further deepen single market, like digital single market. I want to create a single market for secondary raw material because I believe in circular economy. So those are just 4 areas which I'm interested in. Personally, I'm a European, not just a Commission official, but a European. And I do hope that once you have ideas, please make sure that your voice is heard. We need deep European discussion now, and it's not only in the hands of the institutions, it should be on the hands of our citizens. Thank you.
Obrigado a todos por estarem, obrigado a quem nos assistiu por streaming, obrigado pelas questões, obrigado à Comissão Europeia e muito obrigado ao Luís Castro Henriques e a Jyrki Katainen por se terem juntado a nós neste debate pelo futuro da Europa. Um bom dia para vós.
Thank you very much. Thank you.